The first contaminated package triggered my detection equipment at exactly 4:23 a.m. I know because I'd been monitoring the automated sorting system when alerts started screaming across every screen in the facility. Within minutes, we'd identified 17 packages containing what appeared to be weaponized anthrax, all addressed to government officials in Washington, D.C. That's when Walter Johnson, the slow old postal worker, became Master Sergeant Johnson, U.S. Army Chemical Corps, and the last line of defense against biological warfare on American soil. My name is Walter Radar Johnson, and this is the night I stopped hiding my past and embraced the soldier who'd never really retired. But the biological attack wasn't random terrorism. What nobody knew, not the FBI, not the CDC, not even the Department of Homeland Security, was that this assault had been planned for over a decade by people who knew exactly who Walter Johnson used to be and why eliminating him was critical to their operation's success. The real enemy wasn't the foreign agents infiltrating our mail system. The real enemy was the part of me that had been trying to forget 30 years of chemical warfare expertise, and it took the threat of millions of American deaths to make me remember why they used to call me the best biological weapons detector in the Army. December 7th, 2024, Pearl Harbor Day, though I doubt the timing was coincidental. The night shift at Tulsa Regional Mail Processing Facility was supposed to be quiet, routine work for people who preferred sorting packages to dealing with customers. Perfect job for someone who wanted to disappear into the background and be forgotten by the world. At 69 years old, wearing the standard postal service uniform that hung loose on my diminishing frame, I'd spent 6 years perfecting the art of being invisible. Just another old man working the graveyard shift, methodically checking packages, while younger employees treated me like a piece of equipment that happened to breathe. "Walter, you're running behind quota again," called out Supervisor Lisa Chen, glancing at her productivity reports without looking up from her computer. At 31, she'd never worked anywhere more dangerous than an office cubicle, and she treated me like a relic who was too stubborn to retire. "Sorry, Lisa," I mumbled, continuing my careful examination of a package that had triggered one of my personal detection protocols. "Just want to make sure everything's processed correctly." Lisa rolled her eyes. "Walter, it's mail, not rocket science. Just sort it and move on." But it wasn't just mail, and it definitely wasn't rocket science. It was something potentially much more dangerous than either, and my 30 years of experience in chemical and biological warfare detection was screaming warnings that nobody wanted to hear. What Lisa didn't know, what none of them knew, was that the slow, obsessive old postal worker they all avoided was once Master Sergeant Walter Radar Johnson, U.S. Army Chemical Corps, with 3 decades of experience detecting, analyzing, and neutralizing chemical and biological weapons that could kill entire cities. The nickname, Radar, hadn't come from my ability to detect aircraft. It had come from my uncanny ability to identify chemical and biological threats that were invisible to everyone else, including sophisticated detection equipment that cost millions of dollars. Human radar. Pattern recognition so advanced that it seemed almost supernatural to the soldiers who'd served with me in Iraq, Afghanistan, and classified operations in countries that didn't officially exist on any deployment records. But that was a different life, with a different uniform, serving purposes that I'd spent 6 years trying to forget. After retiring from the Army in 2018, I'd deliberately chosen the most mundane civilian job I could find, sorting mail in a processing facility where my paranoid attention to detail would be seen as a quirk rather than a survival skill. For 6 years it had worked. I'd been invisible, forgotten, irrelevant to a world that had moved on without me. The nightmares had faded, the hypervigilance had diminished, and I'd almost convinced myself that Master Sergeant Johnson was just ancient history. But chemical weapons don't care about retirement papers or civilian careers. And the detection instincts that had saved thousands of lives in combat don't disappear just because you're wearing a postal uniform instead of army green. At 4:17 a.m., I was conducting my normal inspection of packages that had triggered the facility's basic screening protocols, routine stuff that usually turned out to be electronics with unusual battery configurations or cosmetics with chemical signatures that resembled explosive materials. But package number 4471B was different. The return address was a mail drop in Nevada that didn't actually exist. I'd memorized thousands of fake addresses during my army service, and this one matched patterns used by foreign intelligence services for covert operations. The shipping weight didn't match the content's description. The postmark showed transit through processing facilities in a sequence that made no geographic sense. And underneath it all, barely detectable even with my enhanced screening equipment, was the faint chemical signature of something that made my blood freeze. Weaponized biological agents. Specifically, what looked like modified anthrax spores that had been engineered for maximum dispersal and lethality. I'd seen this exact signature before in army laboratories where we'd studied Soviet biological weapons development. The chemical fingerprint was distinctive, unmistakable for anyone who knew what to look for. Someone had weaponized anthrax and was mailing it through the U.S. postal system to targets in Washington, D.C. My first instinct was to follow protocol, contact supervisors, alert authorities, let the professionals handle it. That's what postal workers do when they encounter suspicious packages. But 30 years of military experience told me something that protocol didn't account for. If there was one weaponized package, there were probably dozens more. If foreign agents had infiltrated the mail system, they'd done it systematically, not randomly. And if they were targeting government officials in Washington, this wasn't just terrorism. It was an act of war disguised as domestic mail delivery. I began scanning the night's incoming packages with the systematic attention that had once made me legendary in chemical weapons detection. Not just following normal screening protocols, but using enhanced techniques that I'd learned in classified operations. By 4:23 a.m., I'd identified 17 packages with similar chemical signatures, all addressed to different government officials, all scheduled for delivery within the next 48 hours. 17 biological weapons designed to kill everyone who opened them and potentially spread contamination to thousands of additional victims. But that was just what I'd found in one facility during one shift, using detection equipment that most postal workers didn't know how to operate at advanced levels. If this attack was nationwide, if foreign agents had infiltrated multiple mail processing facilities, if they were using biological weapons on the scale that these packages suggested, then millions of American lives were at risk. I keyed my radio to contact Lisa. Lisa, I need you to come to Station 7 immediately. We have a problem. Walter, I'm busy with productivity reports. Whatever it is, just handle it yourself. Lisa, this isn't a productivity issue. This is a national security emergency that requires immediate coordination with federal authorities. The silence that followed told me she'd never heard me speak with authority, with the absolute certainty of someone who'd made similar assessments under similar circumstances. Walter, what are you talking about? National security. Lisa, I'm looking at 17 packages that contain weaponized biological agents designed to kill government officials and spread contamination throughout Washington, D.C. This facility is currently processing instruments of biological warfare, and we have maybe 6 hours before they're delivered to their targets. Walter, that's impossible. Our screening equipment would have detected. Your screening equipment detected chemical anomalies. I detected biological weapons. There's a difference, and right now that difference is the only thing standing between this attack and the deaths of millions of Americans. Through the facility windows, I could see something that confirmed my worst fears. Unmarked vehicles in the parking area that hadn't been there when my shift started. Professional surveillance, positioned to monitor the facility's operations and probably to eliminate anyone who discovered their infiltration operation. They knew I'd found the weapons, and they were preparing to ensure that my discovery died with me. But they'd made the same mistake that every enemy I'd faced in 30 years of operations had made. They'd assumed that eliminating one person would eliminate the threat to their mission. They'd forgotten that some soldiers don't work alone, even when they're wearing civilian uniforms and processing mail instead of processing targets. Time to find out if 6 years of postal work had dulled my edge, or if Master Sergeant Walter Radar Johnson still remembered how to detect and destroy biological weapons before they could kill innocent Americans. Because this wasn't just about 17 contaminated packages. This was about the integrity of America's mail system, the safety of millions of civilians, and the question of whether foreign agents could use our own infrastructure to conduct biological warfare against our government and our people. The answer was about to be delivered with the same efficiency and attention to detail that had made me legendary in the Army Chemical Corps. Number Chapter 2. Detection and analysis. The biological detection equipment I'd been using wasn't standard postal service issue. Over 6 years of employment, I'd gradually introduced modifications and enhancements that most facilities wouldn't have: spectral analysis capabilities, chemical signature databases, and detection protocols that could identify threats invisible to conventional screening. Call it paranoia, call it professional habit, call it the survival instincts of someone who'd spent 3 decades knowing that missing a single contaminated sample could mean the deaths of thousands of people. The equipment had been there for 6 years, just in case. Tonight was the case. The 17 packages I'd identified were just the beginning. Using enhanced detection protocols, I began systematically scanning every piece of mail that had processed through our facility in the past 72 hours. What I found made the anthrax packages look like amateur hour. 43 additional packages containing various biological agents, weaponized smallpox, engineered plague bacteria, modified hemorrhagic fever viruses, and chemical compounds I'd only seen in classified Army laboratories where we studied the most advanced biological weapons programs of hostile foreign governments. 60 packages total, addressed to government officials, military leaders, infrastructure administrators, and civilian authorities across 12 states. A coordinated biological warfare attack designed to decapitate American leadership while spreading contamination throughout the population. This wasn't terrorism. This was genocide. And it was being conducted through America's mail system by people who'd spent years, maybe decades, planning the perfect infiltration of our domestic infrastructure. I keyed my radio to contact Lisa again, but before I could speak, I heard something through my earpiece that made my blood freeze. Station 7 is showing anomalous activity. Package inspection times exceed normal parameters. Recommend immediate intervention. Someone was monitoring our facility's operations in real time, tracking productivity statistics and coordinating a response to my discovery of their biological weapons. They knew I'd found their attack materials, and they were moving to eliminate the threat I posed to their operation. Lisa's voice crackled through the radio. "Walter, there are men outside asking about you specifically. They say they're from postal inspection, but they don't have proper ID, and they're asking questions about your military background." Military background? How did random postal inspectors know about my Army service? I've been careful to keep that information out of my personnel file, listing my previous employment as federal government service, without specifics. Someone had researched my background, identified my specialties, and planned this operation with full knowledge that Master Sergeant Walter Johnson might be the only person in the facility capable of detecting their biological weapons, which meant this wasn't coincidental. They'd deliberately chosen our facility because they knew I worked here, and they'd planned to eliminate me as part of their operation. But they'd made one critical miscalculation. They'd assumed that 6 years of civilian life had made me soft, slow, vulnerable to the kind of direct confrontation they specialized in. They were about to discover that some soldiers never really retire from chemical warfare, and some detection specialists never stop being ready for exactly this kind of attack. Lisa, those aren't postal inspectors. They're foreign agents conducting biological warfare operations against American targets. You need to initiate facility lockdown immediately and contact federal authorities. Walter, that sounds completely insane. Biological warfare, foreign agents. This is a mail processing facility, not a military base. Lisa, in about 3 minutes you're going to understand that sometimes the difference between military and civilian targets disappears when your country is under attack. Through the facility's security cameras, I could see the postal inspectors, three men in their 30s, moving with the coordinated precision of professional operators. They weren't there to inspect anything. They were there to eliminate evidence and witnesses. But eliminating evidence of biological weapons required specialized knowledge that most assassins wouldn't possess. They'd need someone with chemical warfare training to properly decontaminate the packages and remove all traces of their operation. Someone exactly like Master Sergeant Walter Johnson. That's when I understood the full scope of their planning. They hadn't just infiltrated our mail system to deliver biological weapons. They'd also planned to force me to help them cover up the attack by threatening the lives of my civilian colleagues. They wanted my expertise to ensure their operation left no evidence that could be traced back to its origins. But they'd forgotten something important about military training. Soldiers are taught to destroy their equipment and eliminate their intelligence value rather than allow either to fall into enemy hands. I wasn't going to help them cover up their attack. I was going to expose it, document it, and ensure that every piece of evidence was preserved for the investigation that would follow, starting with the biological weapons themselves. The 60 contaminated packages were stored in our secure processing area, isolated from normal mail flow, but not yet secured against potential theft or destruction. If the foreign agents gained access to the facility, they could remove the evidence and complete their operation without any proof that biological warfare had been attempted, unless someone with proper training secured the evidence and prepared it for federal investigation. I accessed the facility's emergency protocols, procedures that most postal workers would never use, but that I'd studied carefully during my 6 years of employment. Chemical spill containment, biological hazard isolation, contamination control measures that could preserve evidence while protecting personnel. But as I worked to secure the biological weapons, I could hear the foreign agents attempting to gain entry to the facility through methods that had nothing to do with official postal inspection procedures. They were cutting through exterior security barriers with equipment that suggested military engineering training, professional work from people who'd done this kind of infiltration before. My radio crackled with Lisa's panicked voice. "Walter, they're breaking into the building. They've got weapons, and they're moving toward the processing floor." "Lisa, where are you right now?" "Break room with three other employees. We locked the door, but I don't think it's going to stop them." Four civilian postal workers hiding in a break room while foreign agents conducted military operations in an American mail facility. This was exactly the kind of scenario that I'd trained for during 3 decades of chemical warfare operations. The difference was that, in the army, I'd been working with soldiers who understood combat procedures. Tonight, I was working with civilians who'd never faced anything more dangerous than holiday mail volume. But civilians could learn tactical procedures if someone taught them quickly and clearly. "Lisa, I need you to listen carefully and follow my instructions exactly. You're about to receive a crash course in chemical warfare defense." "Walter, I don't understand what's happening." "Lisa, foreign agents have infiltrated our mail system to deliver biological weapons to government targets. They're here to eliminate evidence and witnesses. Right now, you and the other employees are witnesses." The silence that followed told me she was processing information that seemed impossible but was becoming undeniably real. "What do we do?" "We're going to turn this mail processing facility into a fortress, secure the evidence that proves this attack was attempted, and keep everyone alive until federal backup arrives." "How do you know how to do all this?" "Because 30 years ago, I was Master Sergeant Walter Johnson, Army Chemical Corps, specialist in biological and chemical weapons detection, analysis, and neutralization. Because I've secured evidence of chemical weapons attacks in Iraq, biological weapons programs in Afghanistan, and classified operations in countries where the wrong decision could mean the deaths of entire cities. Because this is exactly what I was trained for, and 6 years of sorting mail hasn't erased 3 decades of knowing how to fight the kinds of wars that most people never see. But there wasn't time for explanations. "Lisa, I'll tell you my life story after we're not dead. Right now, just trust me and follow my instructions." Through the security cameras, I could see the foreign agents moving through the facility with professional efficiency. They knew the building layout, They knew our security procedures, and they knew exactly where the biological weapons packages were stored. Someone had provided them with detailed intelligence about our facilities' operations, our personnel, and our vulnerabilities. This attack had been planned with inside information and external coordination that suggested a much larger conspiracy than three agents with chemical weapons. But planning an operation and successfully executing it are different skills, and the planners had made one critical error in their intelligence assessment. They'd researched Walter Johnson, the postal worker. They hadn't properly assessed Master Sergeant Johnson, the chemical warfare specialist, and they were about to learn why that difference mattered. I accessed the facility's emergency systems, not just fire suppression and security lockdown, but chemical contamination protocols that could isolate biological hazards while preserving evidence for federal investigation. Most importantly, I activated the communication system that would alert federal authorities to potential biological warfare activities and request immediate tactical support. This is Tulsa Regional Mail Processing Facility, Facility ID 247 Alpha. We have confirmed biological weapons in our processing system and foreign agents conducting active infiltration operations. Request immediate federal response for biological warfare emergency. The response came back within 60 seconds. Facility 247 Alpha, this is FBI Chemical Biological Intelligence Center. We have your alert and are dispatching hazmat teams and tactical support. ETA 22 minutes. 22 minutes. The foreign agents could complete their evidence elimination and escape in half that time, which meant I had to delay them using resources and tactics they hadn't anticipated. I switched to the facility's internal communication system and broadcast to all employees. All personnel, this is Walter Johnson. We are currently under attack by foreign agents conducting biological warfare operations. If you want to survive the next 20 minutes, you'll follow my instructions exactly. The response was immediate confusion and disbelief. Walter, what are you talking about? This is crazy. You're just a mail sorter. Somebody call the police. All personnel, I repeated, using a command voice I hadn't used in 6 years. This facility contains 60 packages of weaponized biological agents designed to kill millions of Americans. 3 foreign agents are currently attempting to eliminate evidence and witnesses. We have federal backup en route, but we need to survive until they arrive. Lisa's voice came back first. Walter, you sound different. You sound like someone who's done this before, I finished. Because I have. And tonight, everyone in this facility is going to learn why the Army used to call me Radar. Through the security monitors, I could see the foreign agents reaching the main processing floor. Professional movement, coordinated tactics, weapons that were designed for close-quarters combat in industrial environments. But they were also operating under the assumption that they'd face minimal resistance from civilian postal workers who had no training in chemical warfare or tactical operations. That assumption was about to be corrected, because for the first time in 6 years, Master Sergeant Walter Johnson was back on duty, and radar had never failed to detect an enemy attack before it succeeded. Number Chapter 3. Contamination Protocols. The foreign agents breached the main processing floor at 4:31 a.m., moving with the coordinated efficiency of special operations personnel who'd trained specifically for this facility's layout and security systems. But they immediately encountered something they hadn't expected. The entire processing area had been sealed under biological contamination protocols that I'd activated using emergency systems most postal workers didn't know existed. Emergency lighting bathed everything in red. Automated ventilation systems had shifted to contamination isolation mode. Security doors had locked down according to chemical warfare containment procedures that I'd programmed into the system during my first year of employment. What the hell? I heard one of them say through the security audio feed. This place is locked down like a military biolab. Because it was. Because I'd spent 6 years gradually upgrading this facility's safety systems using knowledge gained from 30 years of working with the most dangerous substances known to science. And tonight, those upgrades were going to save American lives while trapping enemy agents in their own attack. I keyed my radio to the facility-wide frequency. All personnel, we are now under biological contamination protocols. Stay in secure areas, avoid contact with unauthorized individuals, and prepare for decontamination procedures when federal support arrives. Lisa, what's your current status? Still in the break room with three others. Walter, what did you do to the building? Everything's locked down, and the air system sounds different. I activated protocols designed to contain biological contamination while preserving evidence for federal investigation. The foreign agents are now trapped in a controlled environment where their every movement is being monitored and recorded. How do you know about containment protocols? Because 30 years ago, I was the guy who designed similar protocols for army facilities that handled chemical and biological weapons. Because I've contained contamination from nerve agents, biological warfare experiments, and classified research that could have killed entire cities if it had been released. Because this is exactly what I was trained for, and civilian employment doesn't erase military expertise. But there wasn't time for detailed explanations. Through the security monitors, I could see the foreign agents attempting to breach the secure storage area where the 60 biological weapons packages were contained. They had cutting equipment, electronic bypass tools, and apparent knowledge of our security systems. Professional preparation, but they were operating under the assumption that they'd face standard postal security rather than military-grade biological containment. They were about to discover that some postal facilities are defended by people who understand the difference between mail theft and chemical warfare. Lisa, I need you to coordinate with the other employees to establish communication with all personnel throughout the facility. We're going to turn this place into a fortress until backup arrives. Walter, we're not soldiers. We don't know how to fight. You don't need to fight. You just need to follow instructions from someone who does know how to fight. The foreign agents had reached the storage area and were attempting to breach the containment systems I'd established. But biological weapons aren't like conventional explosives. They require specialized handling to avoid contaminating the people who are trying to steal or destroy them. And I designed the containment protocols specifically to exploit that vulnerability. The storage area was now a sealed environment with positive pressure ventilation that would contain any biological agents released during unauthorized access attempts. The foreign agents could try to steal the packages, but opening the containment area would expose them to the same biological weapons they were trying to eliminate. Through the security audio, I could hear their frustrated coordination. Command, this is Alpha Team. The storage area is sealed with military-grade contamination protocols. We need specialized equipment to access without exposure. Alpha Team, abort package recovery and proceed to witness elimination. The biological weapons will be destroyed with the facility. Witness elimination. They were going to kill everyone in the building and then destroy the entire facility to eliminate evidence of their biological warfare attack. But destroying a mail processing facility containing 60 packages of weaponized biological agents would spread contamination across half of Tulsa, killing thousands of additional innocent civilians. I switched my radio to the emergency federal frequency and provided an update that would hopefully prevent that particular catastrophe. FBI Chemical Biological Intelligence Center, this is Facility 247 Alpha. Be advised, we have 60 confirmed biological weapons packages in secure containment. Enemy agents are planning to destroy the facility to eliminate evidence. Recommend immediate tactical intervention to prevent contamination of surrounding civilian areas. Facility 247 Alpha, understood. Tactical teams are inbound with chemical warfare specialists. Hold your position and maintain containment protocols. Hold position. Standard military instruction that assumed I was in a defensible location with adequate resources and backup. I was in a mail processing facility with 4 civilian employees, facing 3 foreign agents with military training and explosive devices that could spread biological weapons across a major American city. But I'd held worse positions with fewer resources, and I'd never lost a containment operation yet. Time to find out if Master Sergeant Johnson still remembered how to fight chemical warfare using industrial equipment and civilian infrastructure. The foreign agents were moving systematically through the facility, probably looking for manual overrides that would allow them to access the biological weapons storage without triggering additional contamination protocols. But they were also moving toward the break room where Lisa and the other employees were hiding, probably planning to use them as hostages or eliminate them as witnesses. Neither option was acceptable. I began moving through the facility using maintenance corridors and utility access routes that most employees didn't know existed. 6 years of working every shift had taught me alternative pathways that could provide concealment and tactical advantage. But moving through a facility that was sealed under biological contamination protocols required careful attention to air flow, pressure differentials, and exposure protocols that could be fatal if mismanaged. Fortunately, I'd been doing this kind of work since before most people had heard of biological warfare. The break room was accessible through a maintenance corridor that connected to the facility's central air handling system. I could reach Lisa and her group without exposing myself to the foreign agents or risking contamination from biological agents that might have been released during their infiltration attempts. Lisa, this is Walter. I'm approaching your position through the maintenance corridor. Unlock the break room door, but stay away from the main hallway. Walter, how are you moving through the building? Everything's locked down. Long story. Right now, I need you and the others to prepare for emergency evacuation through routes that the foreign agents won't expect. When I reached the break room, I found 4 postal employees, Lisa, 2 night shift sorters, and a maintenance worker, who looked like they'd just discovered that their quiet, boring jobs had turned into a nightmare from an espionage thriller. Walter, Lisa said when she saw me, what's really happening here? And don't tell me this is just suspicious packages. I looked at 4 civilians who deserved to know the truth about what they'd stumbled into, even if that truth was more terrifying than comfortable lies. Lisa, foreign agents have spent years infiltrating America's mail system to deliver biological weapons to government targets. Tonight's operation was designed to kill federal officials while spreading contamination throughout the population. We discovered their attack, which means they're now trying to eliminate witnesses and destroy evidence. The maintenance worker, Carlos Rodriguez, a veteran himself who'd served in the Navy, spoke up. Walter, how do you know about biological weapons and foreign infiltration? Because 30 years ago, I was the Army's leading expert in detecting and neutralizing biological warfare attacks. Because I've stopped chemical weapons programs in Iraq, biological research facilities in Afghanistan, and classified operations where the wrong decision could have meant the deaths of entire cities. Because this is exactly what I was trained for, and retirement papers don't cancel the oath to defend America against enemies who would use weapons of mass destruction against innocent civilians. Carlos, I'll give you my full background briefing after we survive the next 15 minutes. Right now, I need to know, do you remember any of your Navy damage control training? His expression changed immediately. Damage control was basic Navy training for dealing with emergencies that could kill everyone on a ship if not properly managed. Yeah, I remember. Why? Because right now, this facility is like a ship under attack. We need damage control procedures to contain the threat while coordinating with backup. What do you need me to do? Finally, someone who understood that survival sometimes required trusting people who seemed to know what they were doing, even if their knowledge came from unexpected sources. Carlos, you're going to coordinate with me to establish defensive positions throughout this facility. Lisa, you're going to maintain communications with federal authorities. The other 2 employees are going to help me secure the biological evidence. Walter, asked one of the sorters, Jennifer Walsh, a young woman who'd been working postal service for 3 years, how do we fight foreign agents? We're not soldiers. Jennifer, you don't need to be soldiers. You just need to be Americans who refuse to let foreign enemies use our mail system to kill our government officials and contaminate our population. Through the break room windows, I could see the foreign agents had located the biological weapons storage area and were setting up equipment that looked like it was designed for explosive breach operations. They were planning to blow through the containment systems I'd established, grab whatever biological weapons they could carry, and destroy the rest along with the facility. But explosive breaches of biological containment areas create contamination clouds that could spread weaponized agents across miles of surrounding territory. They were willing to contaminate half of Tulsa to cover up their attack on Washington, D.C. That level of callous disregard for innocent life told me everything I needed to know about the kind of enemy we were facing. And it told me that negotiation, compromise, or surrender weren't options that would result in anyone's survival. I keyed my radio to the Federal Emergency Frequency, FBI Chemical Biological Intelligence Center. This is Facility 247 Alpha. Enemy agents are preparing explosive breach of biological containment systems. Recommend immediate tactical intervention to prevent contamination of surrounding civilian areas. Facility 247 Alpha. Tactical teams are 3 minutes out. Can you delay enemy operations until support arrives? Affirmative. 3 minutes. I turned to the 4 postal employees who were looking at me like they'd never seen me before. People, we have 3 minutes to save this facility, these biological weapons evidence packages, and probably half the population of Tulsa. Anyone who doesn't want to be part of this operation can stay here and wait for backup. None of them moved toward the door. Carlos spoke first. Walter, what do you need us to do? We're going to stop 3 foreign agents from destroying evidence of biological warfare while preventing them from contaminating an American city. How? The same way soldiers have always stopped enemy operations. We're going to be smarter, faster, and more motivated than they are. Through the security monitors, I could see the foreign agents setting up their explosive breach equipment. Professional work, but they were operating under time pressure and the assumption that they'd face no organized resistance. Time to show them what happened when they underestimated American postal workers who just learned their country was under attack. Because some battles are fought by armies in foreign countries, and some battles are fought by civilians in mail processing facilities who decide that protecting America matters more than personal safety. Tonight, Master Sergeant Walter Radar Johnson was back on duty, and foreign agents who thought they could use America's mail system to conduct biological warfare were about to receive a lesson in why that was the worst tactical decision they could have made. Number Chapter 4. Chemical Warfare Defense. The explosive breach attempt came at 4:44 a.m., exactly as I'd predicted based on their equipment setup and coordination patterns. But instead of gaining access to the biological weapons storage area, the foreign agents triggered a containment protocol that I'd spent 6 years installing without anyone noticing. When their shaped charge detonated, it didn't just blow through the security barriers. It activated a chemical neutralization system that began flooding the storage area with compounds designed to render biological weapons harmless while preserving evidence for investigation. The foreign agents found themselves standing in a cloud of neutralizing chemicals that would protect everyone in the facility from biological contamination, but would also eliminate their ability to complete their mission. Command, this is Alpha Team, I heard through the intercepted communications. Biological weapons appear to have been neutralized by automated defense systems. Recommend immediate facility destruction to eliminate investigation evidence. Facility destruction meant explosives large enough to level the entire building and spread whatever biological contamination remained across a wide area. They were prepared to kill thousands of innocent civilians to cover up their failed attack. But they'd forgotten something important about American infrastructure. It's often defended by Americans who understand that some battles are worth fighting regardless of the odds. I keyed my radio to coordinate with my civilian allies. All units, enemy agents are preparing to destroy this facility. We have federal backup inbound, but we need to survive the next 90 seconds. Lisa, what's your current position? Still in the break room with the others. Walter, we can see smoke coming from the storage area. That's chemical neutralization, not fire. The biological weapons have been rendered harmless, but now we need to prevent facility destruction. How do we stop people with explosives? Because 30 years ago, I learned that explosives are just tools, and tools can be neutralized if you understand how they work and where they're vulnerable. Because I've disarmed everything from roadside IEDs to sophisticated demolition charges in environments much more hostile than a mail processing facility. Because this is what chemical warfare specialists do. We stop bad people from using dangerous substances to kill innocent people. Carlos, you still remember Navy damage control procedures? Yeah, Walter. What do you need? I need you to coordinate with me to isolate the foreign agents in the storage area while I disarm their demolition charges. Walter, how do you know about demolition charges? Same way I knew about biological weapons detection, 30 years of army training in subjects that most people hope they'll never need to understand. Through the security cameras, I could see the foreign agents setting up what looked like enough explosives to destroy the entire facility. Military-grade demolition charges positioned to create maximum structural damage while ensuring no evidence survived for investigation. But they were working in a facility that had been modified over 6 years to contain exactly this kind of threat. The chemical neutralization system wasn't just designed to render biological weapons harmless. It was designed to create environmental conditions that would make explosive devices unstable and potentially unusable. Chemistry matters when you're dealing with chemical warfare, and explosive devices are chemistry. I began moving toward the storage area using maintenance corridors that provided concealment while giving me access to the building's chemical systems. The foreign agents were focused on their demolition work and weren't monitoring for threats from within the facility. Tactical mistake. When you're conducting operations in unfamiliar territory, you should always assume that the locals know things you don't know. The first explosive device was positioned at the facility's main structural support, designed to collapse the building while creating maximum debris dispersal. Military-grade plastic explosive with electronic timer, set for detonation in 3 minutes. Standard demolition charge, but positioned by someone who didn't understand the building's actual structural vulnerabilities. I'd spent 6 years learning which supports were critical and which were redundant. The charge was positioned to create dramatic destruction, but wouldn't actually cause total building collapse. Amateur work from people who'd done their homework on biological weapons but hadn't properly studied structural engineering. I disarmed the charge using techniques that hadn't changed in 30 years of military service. The electronic timer went dark, and one-third of their demolition plan was neutralized. But I could hear the foreign agents communicating with their command element, reporting problems with their operation and requesting guidance on how to proceed. Command, biological weapons have been neutralized and demolition sequence is experiencing technical difficulties. Recommend immediate extraction. Alpha Team, negative. Mission parameters require complete elimination of evidence and witnesses. Proceed with manual detonation if necessary. Manual detonation meant they were prepared to sacrifice themselves to ensure their attack couldn't be traced back to its origins. Suicide mission parameters, which made them exponentially more dangerous because they had nothing left to lose. But suicide missions only work if the people conducting them have tactical advantages and the element of surprise. I'd eliminated their tactical advantages by trapping them in a facility modified for chemical warfare defense. And I was about to eliminate their element of surprise by demonstrating that some postal workers are more than they seem. The second explosive device was positioned near the chemical neutralization equipment, designed to destroy the systems that had rendered their biological weapons harmless. Smart positioning from someone who understood that evidence preservation was critical to preventing their operation from being exposed. But the positioning also exposed the foreign agent to counterattack from someone who understood both chemical systems and combat tactics. The engagement was brief, professional, and completely decisive. One foreign agent down, two to go. But as I moved toward the third explosive device, my radio crackled with an update that changed the tactical situation. FBI tactical teams are encountering resistance at facility perimeter. Additional hostile forces are preventing federal backup from reaching your location. Additional hostiles meant this operation had more resources and personnel than just 3 agents with biological weapons. This was a coordinated attack with external support designed to ensure their mission succeeded regardless of local resistance. But it also meant that help wasn't coming in 90 seconds as planned. I was on my own with 4 civilian postal workers, facing at least 2 remaining foreign agents who were prepared to die rather than allow their biological warfare attack to be exposed and investigated. Standard military problem: insufficient resources, overwhelming odds, mission-critical objectives that couldn't be abandoned. Solution: stop thinking like you're defending a position and start thinking like you're attacking an enemy operation. Instead of waiting for the foreign agents to complete their demolition and escape, I was going to hunt them down and eliminate them before they could destroy the evidence that would expose their entire biological warfare program. Starting with the agent who was setting up the third explosive device. Master Sergeant Walter Radar Johnson had spent 30 years learning to detect chemical and biological threats that were invisible to everyone else. Tonight, I was going to demonstrate that the detection skills worked both ways. Foreign agents who thought they were invisible were about to discover that, when you're conducting chemical warfare operations, the most dangerous enemy you can face is someone who knows more about chemical warfare than you do. And I'd been studying chemical warfare since before these agents were born. The third foreign agent was positioned near the facility's main communication equipment, probably trying to eliminate our ability to coordinate with federal authorities while setting up explosives that would destroy evidence of their biological weapons program. But he was also working alone, separated from his teammates by the containment protocols I'd activated throughout the facility. Tactical isolation. When enemy operatives lose mutual support and coordination, they become vulnerable to individual engagement by defenders who understand the terrain and the threat environment. I approached his position using concealment techniques that hadn't changed in 30 years of military service. The difference was that, in Iraq and Afghanistan, I'd been moving through buildings that were designed as civilian infrastructure. Tonight, I was moving through a facility that I'd spent 6 years modifying for exactly this kind of scenario. The engagement lasted less than 30 seconds. When it ended, two-thirds of the foreign agent team had been neutralized, and their demolition plan was completely disrupted. But the surviving agent had access to communications equipment that connected him to external support, and what I heard through his radio made me understand that this operation was much larger than I'd realized. Command, Alpha Team has suffered casualties and mission objectives are compromised. Request immediate airstrike authorization to eliminate facility and all evidence. Airstrike. They were prepared to bomb an American mail processing facility to cover up their biological warfare attack, and suddenly everything made sense. This wasn't just about delivering biological weapons to government targets. This was about testing America's ability to detect and respond to biological warfare attacks while gathering intelligence about our defense capabilities. The biological weapons were real, but they were also bait designed to draw out American chemical warfare specialists and identify our detection capabilities, response procedures, and personnel with relevant expertise. I was the real target. The biological attack was just the method they'd chosen to force me to reveal my knowledge, my skills, and my identity. Someone had researched Master Sergeant Walter Johnson, identified my post-military employment, and planned this entire operation to gather intelligence about American biological warfare defense capabilities. But they'd made the same mistake that every intelligence operation makes when it targets American military personnel. They'd assumed that individual expertise was more important than systemic coordination and resource integration. I switched my radio to the Federal Emergency Frequency. FBI Chemical Biological Intelligence Center. This is Master Sergeant Walter Johnson, Army Chemical Corps, retired. The biological attack on this facility was an intelligence gathering operation designed to assess American chemical warfare defense capabilities. They're preparing to conduct airstrike to eliminate evidence and intelligence assets. Sergeant Johnson, this is Colonel Patricia Webb, Army Chemical Corps. We've been monitoring your situation and we're familiar with your service record. What's your assessment of enemy capabilities, Colonel Webb? I remembered her as a lieutenant 20 years ago when I'd been training the next generation of chemical warfare specialists. If she was coordinating the federal response, then this operation was being taken seriously at the highest levels of military command. Colonel, they have detailed knowledge of American mail system operations, access to sophisticated biological weapons, and external support that includes airstrike capabilities. This isn't random terrorism, it's coordinated intelligence gathering disguised as a biological attack. Understood, Sergeant. Air Force interceptors are being scrambled to prevent any unauthorized aircraft from approaching your facility. But we need you to maintain containment and preserve evidence until our chemical warfare teams arrive. Ma'am, I have the biological evidence secured and the enemy agents neutralized or contained. But there's something else you need to know. What's that, Sergeant? This facility isn't the only target. If they're gathering intelligence about American biological defense capabilities, they've probably infiltrated multiple mail processing centers simultaneously. The silence that followed told me Colonel Webb was processing the implications of a nationwide biological warfare intelligence operation. Sergeant Johnson were coordinating with postal authorities to check all regional facilities. But right now, you're our only confirmed asset with eyes on enemy operations. Asset. Military terminology that meant I wasn't just a retired soldier who'd stumbled onto a terrorist plot. I was an active intelligence resource being utilized for ongoing operations. After 6 years of sorting mail and being treated like furniture, I was suddenly back in the business of protecting America from weapons of mass destruction. Colonel, what do you need from me? Everything, Sergeant. Full intelligence debrief on enemy capabilities, complete inventory of biological weapons recovered, detailed assessment of their infiltration methods, and preservation of all evidence for investigation. And the surviving foreign agent. Secure him for interrogation, if possible. Eliminate him if necessary. Your discretion, Sergeant. Military discretion meant I had authorization to do whatever was necessary to complete the mission and protect American lives. It also meant that Colonel Webb trusted my judgment based on 30 years of service and tonight's demonstration of competence under extreme circumstances. The surviving foreign agent was still trying to complete his demolition mission, but the containment protocols had made it impossible for him to access his remaining explosives without exposing himself to the biological agents his team had brought into the facility. Poetic justice. The weapons they'd planned to use against America were now protecting America by trapping the people who'd tried to deploy them. I found him in the main processing area, wearing improvised protective equipment and trying to manually override the containment systems I'd established. Afternoon, I said quietly, approaching from behind with the same careful technique I'd used to neutralize the first two agents. Time to discuss your retirement plans. He spun toward me with the reflexes of someone who'd been trained for close-quarters combat, but 30 years of experience moved faster than 20-something training. The final engagement lasted exactly 47 seconds and ended with all three foreign agents neutralized, their biological warfare operation completely disrupted, and enough evidence secured to expose whatever larger conspiracy had planned this attack. But more importantly, it ended with America's mail system protected from infiltration and millions of innocent lives saved from biological weapons that would have killed them while they opened letters they thought were harmless government correspondence. When federal tactical teams finally reached our facility, they found 4 postal workers and 1 former Army Chemical Corps sergeant who had successfully defended American infrastructure against biological warfare while preserving evidence that would lead to the exposure of a multinational conspiracy. The investigation that followed lasted 8 months and involved agencies I'd never heard of. The biological weapons were traced to laboratories in 3 different countries. The foreign agents were identified as members of an intelligence network that had been operating in the United States for over a decade. But perhaps most importantly, the investigation revealed that America's mail system had been infiltrated by hostile intelligence operations that were using our own infrastructure to conduct surveillance, intelligence gathering, and weapons delivery operations. against American targets. The security reforms that followed included enhanced screening procedures, improved detection equipment, and specialized training for postal employees who might encounter similar threats. They also included the creation of a new position, National Mail Security Coordinator, responsible for identifying and training military veterans who worked in postal facilities and could serve as the first line of defense against future infiltration attempts. I accepted the position and spent the next year traveling to mail processing facilities across the country, teaching postal workers how to recognize and respond to chemical, biological, and radiological threats. Most importantly, I helped identify the hundreds of military veterans who worked in postal service, former soldiers, sailors, Marines, and airmen, whose expertise in various specialties could provide exactly the kind of detection and response capabilities needed to protect America's mail system from future attacks. We called it the Mail Guard program, and within 2 years, every major postal facility in the country had at least one military veteran trained in threat detection and emergency response. Today, I'm 71 years old and still working for the U.S. Postal Service. But instead of sorting mail in one facility, I'm coordinating security operations for the entire national mail system. It's not the retirement I planned, but it's the retirement I was meant for. Every day, millions of Americans receive mail without thinking about the security systems that ensure their letters and packages don't contain weapons designed to kill them. They trust that their mail is safe because they trust that someone is checking, someone is watching, someone is ready to detect and stop threats before they can cause harm. That someone is often a military veteran working a civilian job, using expertise gained from defending America in foreign countries to defend America at home. The foreign agents who attacked our facility thought they were testing American vulnerability to biological warfare. Instead, they discovered American readiness to defend against any threat, regardless of how sophisticated or how carefully planned. They learned that some postal workers are more than they seem, that some detection equipment is more advanced than it appears, and that some Americans never really retire from the mission of protecting their country from enemies who would use weapons of mass destruction against innocent civilians. My name is Walter Radar Johnson. I'm a 71-year-old postal security coordinator, a chemical corps veteran, and a man who learned that some duties never end. They just change uniforms. The mail still needs to be sorted. The packages still need to be delivered. The postal system still needs to operate with the efficiency that Americans expect. But now everyone understands that the person checking their mail might also be checking for threats that could kill them, and that expertise gained in military service doesn't become irrelevant just because someone takes a civilian job. Because that's what veterans do. We serve in whatever capacity our community needs, whether that's sorting mail or stopping biological warfare attacks that threaten the lives of millions of Americans. The watch continues. The mission evolves, but the commitment remains constant to detect and eliminate threats before they can harm innocent people, to preserve evidence that exposes enemy operations, to ensure that America's infrastructure remains secure from infiltration by hostile forces. This is our mail system. This is our country. This is our responsibility. And some of us never really stop serving. We just change our job description while maintaining the same mission, protecting Americans from enemies who would use any method, any weapon, any infrastructure to cause harm to innocent people. Welcome to the U.S. Postal Service, where your mail carrier might be a veteran, your package sorter might be a former special operations soldier, and the person checking your mail for threats might be someone who spent decades learning to detect weapons of mass destruction before they can kill you. The mail gets delivered, the threats get detected, the country stays safe, and Walter Radar Johnson remains on duty 47 years after first learning to detect chemical and biological weapons that could kill American soldiers and civilians. Some skills never become obsolete. Some missions never really end. Some veterans never truly retire from the defense of their country. Thank you for reading Walter Johnson's story. Thank you for understanding that military expertise doesn't disappear with discharge papers. And thank you for recognizing that America's security often depends on quiet professionals who use their specialized knowledge to protect civilians from threats they never see. The quiet guardians are processing your mail, checking your packages, and ensuring that the letters you receive don't contain weapons designed to kill you and your family. They might be postal workers, but they're also the veterans who remember that defending America is a responsibility that transcends job descriptions and continues long after official military service has ended. The mail system is secure. The biological threat has been eliminated. The investigation continues, and Master Sergeant Walter Radar Johnson is still detecting threats that other people can't see, because that's what chemical warfare specialists do. We keep America safe from weapons that could kill millions of people if they weren't detected and neutralized by someone who knows what to look for. The mission continues. The watch never ends. The defense of America is maintained by citizens who never forgot their oath to protect and defend, regardless of what uniform they're wearing or what job they're doing. In memory of all veterans who transition from military to civilian service, while never forgetting their responsibility to protect America and Americans from any threat, regardless of how sophisticated or how well disguised that threat might be. Their expertise continues to serve. Their vigilance never wavers. Their commitment to protecting others makes our infrastructure more secure and our nation safer. Thank you to every veteran who ever took a civilian job while staying ready to use their specialized knowledge when their country needed them again. The mission continues. The mail gets delivered. America stays safe.